Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights On Demand. It was a real privilege to get a chat with Shaun Morgan of Seether, talk about their new album, talk about their 25-year history, all of that and more. This first aired on Tuesday, September 3rd. Enjoy. It's hard to believe, but this year marks the 25th anniversary of the start of Seether. Well, the 25th anniversary of the beginnings of what would become Seether. In 1999, the band Sarin Gas was formed, and a few years later, they changed their name to Seether. And over the course of the last 2+ decades, there's no question they've become one of the most celebrated, one of the most important modern rock bands around. And that is only becoming truer this year as we get ready for their 9th studio album, The Surface Seems So Far. Hanging with us tonight is founding frontman of Seether, Shaun Morgan. Shaun, thank you so much for being here, man.
No worries, man. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So what runs through your head when you hear 25 years? That's a pretty big number, man.
Yeah, that's very strange. That's more than half my life. So that puts it in perspective. Seeing as in 99, it was before I even turned 21. Because I was born in 78. So I'm going to be 46 this year, and it's my birthday's in December. So when we formed in May of 99, it was a very different band to what it is now. And I was just in the darkness, out of the light, rhythm guitarist. And there were these 4 people that I was playing with that I just found through happenstance. They were much older than me. I think the bassist was almost 40 and the drummer was in his late 30s. And then the guitarist was in his 30s. So I was this little kid, and they had a singer. There was this woman who kind of resembled, if you can think back to the days when if you ever went to a church and you sat there and they started singing hymns and there was some lady behind you that was elderly and she had a very high-pitched nasal voice. That was our first singer, and she was on keyboard. So I was just originally looking for something to do on the weekends. And so that went from that to one weekend we rehearsed without the lead guitarist and the keyboardist. And I was like, hey guys, I got these songs. And I just went from there. So that was 25 years ago. So it's crazy to think about it that way. But we've been in the States now for 22 of those years. And basically, more than half my life I've been trying to do this professionally.
That's crazy, man. Do you enjoy reflecting, like looking back, like you just did? You just kind of took us through that. Is that something you find yourself doing regularly?
Not at all. It's nice when it comes up sort of out of the blue and it's unexpected, because I hadn't thought about that for a long time. And my only real regret is that I never kept any of those demos so I could prove to people just how terrible the music was, because it was horrific. It was real formulaic kind of 80s pop / 80s hair metal rock type stuff. Because the guys that I was in the band with, that was the era that they'd grown up in. So that was kind of their vibe. I wish I'd kept that, but it's nice to think back and go, wow, that's crazy. I guess the real sort of eye-opening and sobering thing is that's 25 years that seems to have passed in the blink of an eye. And it's in the moment you don't think of it and you think, oh, this is, I'm young, this is going to last forever, or this will just be a weekend gig for a few months, whichever way it goes. But you never really think, oh yeah, I'm going to be sitting talking about this little horrible band that we were in this guy's garage, doing terrible, original tracks. And here 25 years later, I'm going to be sitting in Nashville with kids of my own, probably going to start a band soon, I'm assuming, because my kids like to make a lot of noise. It's nice to think back on it, and honestly, for the most part, there's a lot of positive things. I can look back and go, it's been great. There's not much that I can go look back and go, oh man, that was a terrible time.
Yeah, which is, obviously it's an understatement or an obvious statement, but that's a pretty good feeling, man. Like, certainly, I'm sure there is a regret here or there or something like, I might have done that differently.
Absolutely.
But to be able to look back and say, it's been pretty good. That's a pretty great feeling, man.
Yeah, it is. It's nice. Nothing is without its regrets, unfortunately. Right. But thankfully I have music to sort of try and dissect those a little bit and figure them out and purge myself of them. But I think that if it all, if let's say that the door closed on this part of my life right now, or it all sort of ended abruptly, I could still look back and say, wow, that was 99% a good time.
I love hearing that, man. I love hearing that. Well, it's interesting too to hear you say like the 25 years has gone by in the blink of an eye, because 25 years is such a big number. It doesn't feel like Seether is this legacy act or anything, like, yeah, 9 albums into the career, 25 years into doing what you're doing, Shaun. But man, still making significant, relevant rock music. It's pretty incredible to see and to hear.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's funny. I think you've mentioned it now, and maybe somebody else mentioned it, but I had no idea it was the 9th one. In my mind, I thought we were only seriously. It felt like maybe 5 or 6. You know what I mean? It's crazy how that's the other thing I haven't really kept track of. I've never really looked back and said, okay, so what is the discography? What have we got so far? You go through the career and you get these cool little plaques and things every once in a while. And for the most part, mine tend to gather dust, or I'm looking at some that are hanging now because my wife insisted that I get them off the floor, but most of them are still on the floor, kind of just taking up space. So you don't really ever think of it, of that side of it, but 9 is crazy. That's 8 more than I thought we'd ever get to do. And certainly when I was a kid, that's 9 more than I thought we would do. So it's great to still be here. I think the best part too is that just as a band, we're all in a really good spot together. We're all in really good spots in our lives. Everyone's kind of figured out and ironed out all of the juvenile behaviors and the sort of cliches that come with rock music, and we're all just kind of like, somebody said it the other day that we're basically dad rock now, and I was like, damn it, man. But you know what? I'm just going to lean into it, I guess. I am a dad, and we all are.
There you go, yeah.
Technically, we are dads playing to kids and to other dads. So, yeah, we'll just happily take on the dad rock moniker and keep on rolling.
Yeah, I guess so, man. I'm a dad, and I enjoy this music, so here we are, man. So let me say, man, congrats on the impending release of The Surface Seam so far. It's out on September 20th. The lead single, Judas Mind, is just an absolute crusher, and we've loved it since the day it came out on the show. How's it feel to be at this point? It's interesting to hear you talk about not really looking back that often and not even, counting the albums or anything like that. How's it feel to be at this point ready for a new album to finally be out?
Well, with how different things have been for the past 3 or 4 years, usually when a new album was getting ready to come out, we'd already be out there touring. We'd be 6 months or sometimes we'd be as far out as that. And we'd start touring on a new album and a new single and stuff. And, as of I think 2018 was the last time we did a really extended tour. 2019, we did a show. 2020, we did, I think, 1 stream show. 2021, we did 6 weeks. 22, we did 6 weeks. Sorry, 22, we did 6 weeks. 23, we did 6 weeks. And then this year, we've only done about 6 weeks of touring. So for us, that went from a band doing easily 9 to 10 months of a year touring and getting off the road, writing an album, and then basically immediately going back out. It's been weird having all this time, but it's, the good part of that is that my family has really benefited from that. And I'm really grateful that I've been able to spend more time with him. But yeah, so there used to be this routine and this sort of bubble we lived in. And so when a new album was coming out, it was the anticipation was there. Gone are the days of like, oh, the album's coming out, let's go buy it in the store. With the exception of a handful of stores these days, with possibly some of the bigger chains that still carry music, and it's a very dwindling music section, certainly of CDs and such. But that sort of disappeared by the wayside, and that was a big thing for us. It was a big sort of ritual to go out and find the disc on the day it came out and hold it in your hand. And honestly, oftentimes with a previous label, that was oftentimes the first times we ever got to hold one. It was oh, cool, thanks, guys. And they were like, well, there's a release date, and we'd say thank you very much. And we would honestly, when we were signed to Wind Up, we would go out, and the first time we ever saw the final product was for many of the albums anyway. Was when so it's crazy. But yeah, no, it's exciting. It's definitely the world's changed so much when you listen to radio and stuff. I don't really listen to much terrestrial radio. I don't really listen to much music radio anymore, to be honest. There's a lot of audio books or podcasts that I listen to now. I guess that's one of the hallmarks of aging. But it's also because when I'm in my car, it's the only time it's not 1,000 decibels in this house, and so it's nice to be able to not listen to loud stuff. But yeah, with anything coming out, there's definitely an excitement and an anticipation. It kind of feels a little bit surreal still right now because we've been doing sort of one-off shows here and there. We've done this year, like I said, we toured with Stained, I think in end of April into May. And then we've done 2 fly dates, and we're about to do another fly date this weekend. And then somewhere in the middle of September, we pick up with Skillet, and we'll go out and we'll tour this album.
Yeah.
And then basically once that tour is done, that's the touring for this year, because then you sort of heading in towards the end of the year, and it's winding down with the holiday season and stuff. So it's a very different landscape for us to navigate, but not one that I'm not enjoying, to be honest. Because again, I have a son who's about to turn 2, and I have a daughter who just turned 7, and it's a lot of work, and so the musician side of me has slowly but surely been whittled away and replaced by the dad side over these past 4 years. And to be honest, there's a much larger percentage of that person now. So
well, when you say the musician part has dwindled, is that clearly the live musician part of you, but would you also say even like the songwriting part of you, has that kind of taken a hit over the last few years?
No, not necessarily in the sense of the enjoyment of it. The time I get to do it has definitely taken a hit. Like, the first year of my son being born, it was a lot, I had to be present for all of the newborn type stuff. And not that I say had to, but I was really happy to do it. But now that he's older and he's just started daycare literally yesterday. And my daughter starts school next week, or goes back to school next week. So she'll be in 2nd grade. So it'll be nice to have the daytime where you don't have to necessarily, dedicate 24 hours of your day to keeping children alive. It's like for a couple of hours a day, they can go and they can learn some things at school, and they can mingle with some friends and things. And then that opens my wife and I up to, all right, well, now I've got some, there's a lot of projects around the house too that have been undone. Like,
sure. Yeah.
My wife always has a project that she wants me to do. So I currently have a guest bathroom I'm about to start remodeling. And those are fun things that you get to do. But usually we have to wait till like my son's asleep and he takes a 2-hour nap. So you've got that 2-hour window of like, right, what can we do real quick without him running between our legs? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Shaun, I've never felt more connected to a rock star than I do right now.
And it's all incredibly fun. And it's
absolutely,
all, but I'm not kidding. I actually had to download a decimeter to my phone, and I got a couple just to make sure I wasn't out losing my mind. But very often, with these 2 kids in the house, it's hitting 110 dB, and it's purely from the older one teasing the younger one, and then he screams bloody murder. And it's like the equivalent, I think, of being inside a train station. And so you think you endure about, I don't know, it's mostly in the afternoons. They dive off this cliff of insanity, and it becomes this mosh pit in my living room. And it's like, you get 2-3 solid hours of just literal eardrum rattling, eye shaking noise, and by the time they go to bed, it's almost like you have this adrenaline crash.
Yeah,
but yeah, so all of that
they're blessings, man. They're blessings.
They are blessings. Jury's out, but no. So it's definitely it's a massive privilege and an honor to be their parents and to be a dad, and it's wonderful. But
sure.
Having said that, my job always has been and still is to tour. And yes, the creative side is still wonderful. It's still something that I, when I have the time, I actually just started writing again really recently. I've got probably about 4 or 5 songs that are feeling pretty solid that may already be heading towards a new album, because that's the other funny thing is you finish an album. So I finished the demos about a year ago, just about, and then you get everybody together and you send out the demos, and then everybody sort of comes together and says, these are the ones that we like to do for an album. And you go, okay, we all agree. And then it's like, okay, now you're in December, and we did some drums and some bass, and then everybody went home for the holidays, and then we came back in January, and about 7 or 8 days later, we had the album done, and then it was mastered and mixed by, the middle of February. So we've just been sitting here since then, kind of going, I'm very excited about this. But, it's funny, at that point, I've already listened to this music 1,000 times, every song 1,000 times. So I'm kind of like almost burned out on it. So I had to stop listening to it. And I haven't listened to it from start to finish yet now, I'd say in a good few months. But yeah, that the creative side is always something that I've enjoyed. And I think even more so now than before, because, with the label we're on, the A&R that we have, they are completely hands off. And when we did our first 5 or 6 albums, I would say 6 albums, because that was the first 6 we did with Wind Up, because this will be our 3rd with Concord and Fantasy now. There was an A&R guy who was an absolute dildo, and he constantly was breathing down my neck or telling the producers that we needed someone to write for us because we didn't know what we were doing. Wow. And really, he was trying to inject himself into the creative process so that he could try and get some sort of publishing out of it. And also to stroke his ego. And it wasn't just one, there was a couple of guys like that. And so we've been really lucky in that sense that's made it far more fun to create, because there's no boundaries to fit into, and there's no limitations that have been set. So when I come to writing, I can just start writing whatever I feel like, and then I can either choose to dial something back, or alternatively to sort of really push a limit on something.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting too to hear you say like you're already writing and you're already thinking ahead, because on September 20th, that's going to be fans' first time hearing this whole album, and you're like, guys, I've been done with this for a while, so of course you're already kind of thinking ahead, or at least creatively working on what might be next.
Yeah, I think also there's kind of there was a bit of a creative high after the last one. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the way it turned out. I think we did a lot of really great guitar tones that we found between Corey and Matt Hyde. I think just sonically for me, with every album that we do, especially now that I'm producing and Matt Hyde's engineering and Corey's sort of co-engineering, we seem to be getting closer and closer to the kind of sound that I've always been hearing us. Or the sound that I've always been hearing for us as a band. Now, the years gone by, there were some great producers and some really, really crappy ones. Great would be Brendan O'Brien. The rest fall in the other category. So, work that out, I guess. But you learn from all these people, and with their weaknesses and their faults, even great guys like Brendan O'Brien, the one thing I felt was missing was that it didn't necessarily completely represent us. He's great. I love the guy as a person. I loved working with him. I loved what I learned from him the most. I think had we not worked with him, I wouldn't have had the courage to say, all right, I think I'm going to step up now and do the production, because I do 90% of it anyway when I'm writing. So when it comes into the studio and a producer like Brendan, the first album we did with Brendan, he had a lot of notes and a lot of rewrites and a lot of, back and forth. But then the second album with Brendan, he had no notes, really, nothing of consequence necessarily. It was like little things here and there. And that was a big, a big feather in my cap, I'd say, as far as songwriting goes, because he's quite particular in who he works with. And he had gone to bat for me with the old label, saying, he was the go-between, telling them that they had to leave me alone and that we would get through the album and the songs were fine. They just need to back off. And so 2 albums with him, learned a bunch of stuff. And then there were a couple of things that I didn't like. And so what we've done is I feel like he was one of the best producers, is still one of the best producers for rock that's ever lived, and certainly in my lifetime. And so I took what I learned from him and I've applied that. And then I've taken some things that I felt that I would like to, and it's mostly sonic. It's mostly like leaving things out rather than adding things in. Like, Brendan really loved to do sort of percussion stuff. And if you listen to the last album we did with him, which was the one before Poison the Parrot, he basically came in and he loved to do like some percussion stuff over the backs of songs and little keyboard bits and stuff. And it's cool, but it's not representative of us. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it adds this cool vibe. And I think had it been something that I'd written for the songs, I might have enjoyed more that they were there. But, you're sitting in a room with Brendan O'Brien and he's saying, I've got these ideas. You go, hell yeah, you got these ideas. Let's do it. So you kind of roll with it. But I think since then, now it's straight rock. For the most part, it's just guitars, bass, drums, and vocals, right? And maybe occasionally, if I feel like it, there'll be some string parts or there'll be even some keyboards or whatever. but it'll be something that was written for the song specifically, not just thrown in as an afterthought or as a quote unquote fairy dust kind of, shiny bit on top of a song. I don't think that those things are necessary. Like if you listen to 90% of pop music, they don't even have chord changes.
Right.
The verses and the choruses are the exact same chord progressions over and over. The drum beats don't even change, or the beats don't change. Can't call it drums, but it's really the melodies and the lyrics. And I think that for the longest time we were sort of told to corner ourselves into the songwriting structure of, okay, it's verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse 2, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, either pre-chorus into chorus or double chorus, so it was like there was this formula, and we basically had to follow it, because if we didn't, then obviously A&R would get their knickers in a knot, and we'd have to go back and appease them. And I'm glad that we don't have to do that anymore, because once you feel like you have to write stuff a certain way, it's funny, I had to almost break the habit. When we did the first album that I produced, I was still kind of locked into that mode of thinking, because I was expecting that as the pushback from A&R, right? And it's like,
sure,
well, I know they're going to want a pre-chorus, they're going to want to do this, or we have to hit the chorus by the first minute, otherwise the song's, all of these stupid things that these A&R clowns tell you over the years that they might just throw out, not realizing how important of an impact that can have, because they are the ones, telling you how to shape your music. They're saying, all right, well, this needs to be 3 minutes long, no longer than that, because radio won't play anything that's longer. I'm like, God, I don't care. Like, I don't care. It's like, why do we have to change the song for the specific purpose to appease? Now, sure, radio is obviously something we have to be symbiotic with, and we certainly have to all get along. But once the song is done, surely we can then pare it down to make everybody happy. But the album version needs to be what the vision is. And I know that sounds kind of pretentious in a way, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. But it's just that there's a way that I was told to do stuff for so long that when it came to writing for these newer albums, I had to break the habit, because I was like, well, I was forcing myself to insert a pre-chorus when I didn't really feel like the song needed it. But in the back of my mind, I was still hearing this A&R clown going, "Where's the pre-chorus?" And so it was interesting, because a lot of the songs don't have pre-choruses. In fact, some of them don't have. They just go straight into a chorus, like songs used to do. Right, But there was this golden age of rock, I guess, where everybody followed that sort of formula. And yeah, it's liberating to get out of that box and just write. And some stuff that I write doesn't even have a repeating chorus. Not on this album, but there's certainly some sides and stuff that just, as long as the song feels correct and it feels like it's done and it feels like it's flowing, I don't really care anymore about, okay, this needs to follow this pattern to appease these corporate people so they can go and clap each other on the backs and say what a great job they did.
That's right, man. Well, and I know you said at the beginning of this that you aren't very reflective, or you don't spend a lot of time looking back, but what a great thing about having 25 years behind you, because just like that first band with the woman on keyboards, you start figuring out what you don't want to do, and you figure out exactly what you do want to do, and then you go through producers, well, and even with a producer like Brendan O'Brien, like someone on the plus side, right? You can still figure out like what you want to do as a producer, or what you wouldn't want to do as a producer.
Yeah, I mean, he taught me so much about when it comes to recording, how to be efficient, how to be quick, how to get the job done. But when it came to the pre-production stuff, like I said, the first album we did with him, I learned a lot in that part, where he was like, he would send me back rewrite ideas, or he would say, hey, this bridge needs to change, or how about we move this chorus into the bridge, and now you have to write a new chorus, or turn the bridge into just sort of actual rearranging of music and actual production stuff. So then when the second album came around, I preemptively struck with all of that stuff. So I'd write songs and I go, well, hang on, what's Brendan going to tell me here? And then I would get in there and I would make all the changes beforehand. And eventually, they got to him and he's like, oh yeah, cool, let's do this. So, there weren't many negatives. And in fact, if anything, there were just petty negatives with Brendan.
Sure.
The other guys, other guys are like Like they wouldn't even show up for the entire recording process for the whole week. And then they'd pull in on a Sunday evening and say, oh, do it again. It's like, well, where have you been? We've been here the whole week from, noon until 10 or whatever it is. And that was the other thing too, that I hated when they would make you start at noon. It's like, well, what are you doing from 8 till noon, bro? Well, the way we do it now is we're in the studio by 8 a.m. in the morning and we go until 8 or 10 at night. And then we go home and we come back in and do it the next day. There's this weird, this weird unspoken rule that you can't start recording music until noon within the industry. Every single guy we worked with, up until we started doing it ourselves, they all had this noon start time. And I guess that's fine. You want to have, a few hours of your day to go about your normal life or whatever you have to do. But for me, it's like, hey, we have a job to do here. And I want to get this job done because I want to start it, I want to finish it, and I want to move on. And that's another thing about having the control over everything and having the guys with a work ethic that they have. Matt Hyde, we did an album where there was basically the studio was upstairs and downstairs was lodging for any bands that were in town. Like for sort of, if you're a band in town recording, there's a whole bunch of bunks and stuff and bedrooms downstairs. And so we would finish at about 9 at night. I would leave earlier to come to hang out with my daughter at the time after school, but I would knock off at say 5. The other guys would knock off about 8 or 9. And then Matt would work until like 2 a.m, go downstairs, sleep for 3 hours and come back upstairs. And by the time we got back in the morning at 8 or 9 9 o'clock, he's already got a few hours of work behind him and we were ready to go. Drums have been cut together or have been edited or, whatever needed to be done digitally had been done. So there was none of this like, okay, let's do some stuff. Let's wait a couple of days for everybody to catch up and then let's go back in and carry on working. It was like, no, we can keep this machine rolling. And I think that for me is it's crucial as far as, we've got to get in, we got to start and we got to keep going until it's done. And we did an album one time where we broke it into 3 or 4 different sections. And it bugged me because we went in and did 4 songs, 4 songs over a couple of days. And then you leave for 3 months and then you come back and do another 4 songs. Then you leave again for 3 months. And I was like, dude, this is not right. It doesn't feel right. It's like, you're basically recording separate EPs. It didn't feel to me like it was going to have the right kind of, flow throughout it. But it was going to sort of all fit together. That's one thing I learned. We did that with Brendan one time. And I don't remember whether that was because we didn't have enough songs at the time when we started or whether it was like he was also working on other projects and he was kind of fitting us in. But that was one of the key things I took. And that, again, there wasn't anything of what he or how he had produced. It was just how that process unfolded. And from that process, I realized, I can't do it that way. I can't break this up into sections and even with this album, we took 2 weeks off between drums and bass. Actually, it was 3 weeks until coming back for guitars because it was Christmas and New Year and some guys had some family things they needed to take care of and the usual life stuff. Yeah. And I was sitting here just waiting, 3 weeks, waiting. And then finally when the day came to go in, it's like, oh, thank God I can go back to work. So it's when I talk about learning from guys, those are the kinds of things that are included in that as well.
Well, Shaun Morgan, thank you so much for the time tonight, man. I mean, we're just scratching the surface on all things Seether, really. I mean, we're covering a lot of ground, but getting ready for this new album. The surface seems so far. It is out on September 20th. And, in celebration of that, you guys are hitting the road, like you said, with Skillet, but also with Tim Montana and Royal Lynn, who we both love. We love both of them on this show.
Yeah, Tim's great.
And it's going to be, a great, great tour, all in celebration of this new music, this new record, man. Cannot wait to see all that's to come, to hear the stuff you're already working on, man, for the follow-up. And listen, we've got details on this record. We've got the full tour schedule at loudwire.com. You can stay up to date with everything going on in Seether's world at Seether.com. And Shaun, I'll just say, man, you are welcome back anytime. Love chatting with you, man.
Yeah, brother. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I should definitely see if I can make it back soon. That'll be awesome.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.